Another old friend, Richard Rohmer, returns to Newsmakers for a special to talk about his latest creation of fiction and his views on the national and global scene. Plan to join us.
Newsmakers with 590 CKEY News commentator Pete McGarvey is seen every week at this time. We welcome your letters. Write Cable 10, Rogers Cable TV, 855 York Mills Road, Don Mills, Ontario, M3B 1Z1.
It's violence and a thriller kind of thing, if you will.
You have a project underway, another book coming out this fall. It is non-fiction. It concerns a couple of commanders from World War II.
Peter, it is fiction.
It is fiction?
It is historical fiction. It's the first one I've done, and it is called Rommel and Patton. And they are in Normandy back in 1944, and I tell the story of the Battle of Normandy from June the 6th, 44, D-Day, when we invaded Normandy, until the end of that battle, which was August the 20th. And I tell the story from the German side with Rommel as the main character. And he is injured on July the 17th out of the war, and then the main character I pick up is his successor, Field Marshal von Kluge. On the Allied side, of course, there is Patton as the main character, and Montgomery fighting with everyone, Churchill, Roosevelt, and it's a great mix, but it's a long, big book, probably almost 2.5 times the size of Starmageddon.
When can we look for it?
It'll be out in September, I'm happy to tell you, and it's in the hands of the printer right now, so we're well advanced with the book.
Another Irwin publisher?
It's an Irwin publishing book, and I'm very happy with them. They've been great publishers for me.
Now, SDI becomes a reality in the book, but in real life, and here I'm quoting from a recent Richard Rohmer column in The Sun, you think Star Wars will be a non-starter, another victim of a Challenger explosion. How do you figure that?
Well, in the column I pointed out there was a message, a signal, I call it, from Peking about a week ago, in which it was announced that the Chinese were going to use their rockets to launch a couple of American private business satellite communication satellites. And I really simply said that is a precursor, a signal, that the whole Star Wars system may never fly. The reason is very simple. The Americans are at wit's end, if you will, in terms of launching vehicles into space. There have been several Titan rocket failures recently, and of course the big failure was the shuttle. And the shuttle is going to take many months for the next one to fly, and then there are going to be months after that to ensure that it will fly successfully and safely. In the interim, as I read the situation, let me stand back one. The only way the Americans are going to put a strategic defense system into space by the year 2000 or ever is to do it with a shuttle system. You've got to have these things that look like aircraft that can be launched from the ground, carry their satellites and weaponry into space, launch them, come back down, and go up again. And the Americans at this stage, with the shuttle disaster, are at this point without such a system. You then have to look at the engine who has made, and I use the word who has made the Star Wars system go so far. And his name is Reagan. It's his concept. He is going to be out of office in 2 years' time. If by that time the shuttle program is not really functioning well or back into a functioning position, the steam that this engine provides is going to disappear. And it could very well be by that time that the politicians in the United States and the people who are against the strategic defense system, Star Wars, will say, forget it. So that's why I'm saying that there's every possibility, because of the Challenger situation, that the whole Star Wars program, which needs the shuttle, may get scrapped.
Let's take a look at some of the other concerns in global news recently. Let me pick your mind as time allows. The Chernobyl disaster, what further fallout can we expect from it, and what's going to be the ultimate effect on Soviet prestige and progress?
Well, I think that the first situation and first reaction that I have to Soviet prestige is that it is clear that their capability in terms of the handling of nuclear power stations and how to cure their problems is really quite a bit lower than one would have expected. Their reaction to it was extremely slow. Their understanding of what had happened was minimal. Even their ability to handle the situation medically. Old Arnold Hammer, the great American, had to get doctors over to do the bone marrow transplants, this kind of thing. It seems to me that our perception of the Soviet ability technically and scientifically is not where we've been led to believe by the Soviets that it is. In terms of I think we're going to see a lot more people die from this event in the Soviet Union, and there'll be downstream injuries suffered as a result of this event that we probably won't know about because they'll hold it. But I think that what this does, it certainly does for me, is this situation produced radiation around the world in substantial scale. Just imagine now what one nuclear weapon would do in terms of beginning to pollute the world and poison the world, let alone 100 or 200. In other words, it's an example, as was Hiroshima and Nagasaki, of what nuclear weaponry can do, and it really continues to point the way to the absolute necessity of getting Gorbachev and Reagan or whoever together to begin to negotiate the abolition of nuclear weapons.
Let's hope that happens. On the home front, the Mulroney government's in trouble on several fronts, and I know from some past conversations that you're not a bit surprised things have turned out as they have. Where did the Prime Minister go wrong, and can he recover before he faces the electorate again?
Well, it's a personal opinion, and indeed I think he has gone substantially wrong. It's awfully hard to make an assessment of the mechanism that he's put in place in the Prime Minister's office. They have become extremely remote as a government in a very short period of time. They're not paying any attention to outside opinions. They're not seeking them. Getting access to ministers is almost impossible, even by people who are great members of the party. By the way, I am no longer a conservative. You can tell because
I was just going to ask.
I've been a conservative for quite a while, and the reason you can tell is I haven't been appointed to anything. So I think it's a great disappointment. I think that Mr. Mulroney, there was great expectations for him, that there would be change. He certainly has the majority to do anything he wishes, and instead of that, the man has been confronted with all manner of disaster, largely predictable in the sense that if you have that number of people from all sectors of the country, somebody's going to goof either in the cabinet or on the back bench, and that's been happening. But one of the real problems is that his fire department, it works badly. What I mean is when the fire starts, he throws gasoline on it instead of something to put the fire out. And that has been Mr. Mulroney's, I think, biggest difficulty. And the handling of the Sinclair-Stevens affair is just another graphic example of that. Not only does he throw gasoline on, when he flips to the other side and changes his mind, he throws alcohol on, you see. So whatever it is, I really feel sorry for him. I think that he has capability, but he is sure not putting it together.
Well, by contrast, David Peterson is doing just fine at Queen's Park. What accounts for his success?
Well, I think probably to begin with, it was the expectation. He was not elected to be the premier of the province. He cobbled that together in an agreement with a fellow called Bob Ray, and that agreement, much to my astonishment, has held together. The fact was that there was no expectation that this man would be the premier. When he became the premier, the expectation remained low. He played it very, very carefully. He is obviously in command of his troops, monitors them very well, but he made a cardinal move in the right direction when at the beginning he kept all of the civil servants, all the deputy ministers and the people that served under them, and brought them in and said, you belong to us, we want to work with you, there is no axe, we need you. and he got the right response. And so he has been able to get good advice from his civil servants all the way through the piece, and that is showing, because they're the people who really make it or break it in the long run for a government that will pay attention to civil servants.
If you were David Peterson, would you dissolve the NDP alliance and go now for an election?
I would consider it very seriously now. The polls are beginning to show that he would smash everybody in sight, and that, from a politician's point of view, is a great carrot, particularly when you have to, by agreement, pay attention to another party. So I think that David Peterson will be thinking very seriously now about an election, and this is a good time of the year to do it.
My thanks to Richard Rohmer. Look for Starmageddon at your favorite bookstore, a thriller chiller drawn from the headlines and in the best Richard Rohmer tradition. Well, this edition of Newsmakers is the last of the current series. During June, July, and August, the best of the past 52 weeks. And we'll resume in September with a new lineup of guests. In the meantime, your comments and questions are welcome, addressed to Cable 10 at the address that you'll see on the screen in just a moment. Thanks for being with us, and have a good summer.